What is the harm in tightening standards for not only who buys guns, but those who sell them?
First of all, I'd like to recognize Governor Haley for her incredible leadership in the aftermath of the Emmanuel AME Church killings. I also want to recognize the people in that church that showed the grace of God and the grace of forgiveness and the mercy that they showed. I don't know if any of us could have done what they did one after another within 48 hours of that tragedy taking place. Look, here's the deal. In this particular case, the FBI made a mistake. The law itself requires a background check, but they didn't fulfill their part of the bargain within the time that they were supposed to do. We don't need to add new rules. We need to make sure the FBI does its job, because that person should not have gotten a gun. It would not have passed the background check. The first impulse of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton is to take rights away from law-abiding citizens. That's always what they do, whether it's the San Bernardino terrorist attack or if it's these tragedies that take place. I think we ought to focus on what the bigger issue is. It isn't law-abiding gun owners. Look, I have an A+ rating in the NRA, and we also have a reduction in gun violence because in Florida, if you commit a crime with a gun, you're going away. You're going away for a long, long while. And that's what we should focus on, is the violence in our communities. Target the efforts for people that are committing crimes with guns. And if you do that and get it right, you're going to be much better off than creating a political argument where there's a big divide. The other issue is mental health. That's a serious issue that we could work on. Republicans and Democrats alike believe this. The president's first impulse is to do this by executive order, power he doesn't have. Why not go to Congress and in a bipartisan way begin with the process of mental health issues so that people that are spiraling out of control because of mental health challenges don't have access to guns?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Trump, are there any circumstances that you think we should be limiting gun sales of any kind in America?
No. I am a Second Amendment person. If we had guns in California on the other side where the bullets went in the different direction, you wouldn't have 14 or 15 people dead right now. If even in Paris, if they had guns on the other side going in the opposite direction, you wouldn't have 130 people plus dead. So the answer is no. And what Jeb said is absolutely correct. We have a huge mental health problem in this country. We're closing hospitals, we're closing wards, we're closing so many because the states want to save money. We have to get back into looking at what's causing. You know, the guns don't pull the trigger. It's the people that pull the trigger. And we have to find out what is going on. We have to protect our Second Amendment, and you cannot do this, and certainly what Barack Obama was doing with the executive order. He doesn't want to get people together. You know, the old-fashioned way where you get Congress. You get the Congress, you get the Senate, you get together, you do legislation. He just writes out an order, executive order. Not supposed to happen that way.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Rubio, you said that President Obama wants to take people's guns away, yet under his presidency, gun sales have more than doubled. That doesn't sound like a White House unfriendly to gun owners.
That sounds like people are afraid the president's going to take their guns away.
Of course.
Look, the Second Amendment is not an option. It is not a suggestion. It is a constitutional right of every American to be able to protect themselves and their families. I am convinced that if this president could confiscate every gun in America, he would. I am convinced this president, if he could get rid of the Second Amendment, he would. I am convinced because I see how he works with his Attorney General, not to defend the Second Amendment, but to figure out ways to undermine it. I have seen him appoint people to our courts, not to defend the Second Amendment, but to figure out ways to undermine it. Here's my second problem. None of these instances that the president points to as the reason why he's doing these things would have been prevented. You know why? Because criminals don't buy their guns from a gun show. They don't buy their guns from a collector. And they don't buy their guns from a gun store. They steal them. They get them on the black market. And let me tell you, ISIS and terrorists do not get their guns from a gun show. His answer You name it. If there's an act of violence in America, his immediate answer before he even knows the facts is gun control. Here's a fact. We are in a war against ISIS. They are trying to attack us here in America. They attacked us in Philadelphia last week. They attacked us in San Bernardino 2 weeks ago. And the last line standing between them and our families might be us and a gun. When I'm President of the United States, we are defending the Second Amendment, not undermining it the way Barack Obama does.
But what fact can you point to, Senator? What fact can you point to that the president would take away everyone's gun? You don't think that's extreme?
About every 2 weeks he holds a press conference talking about how he can't wait to restrict people's access to guns. He has never defended law. I'll give you a fact. Well, let me tell you this. Do you remember when he ran for president of the United States and he was a candidate and he went and said, these Americans with traditional values, they are bitter people and they cling to their guns and to their religion. That tells you right away where he was headed on all of this. This president, every chance he has ever gotten, has tried to undermine the Second Amendment. He doesn't meet. Here's the difference. When he meets with the Attorney General in the White House, it's not, how can we protect the Second Amendment rights of Americans? It's, give me options on how I can make it harder for law-abiding people to buy guns. That will never happen when I am President of the United States.
Governor Christie, you too have criticized the president's recent executive action on gun control, saying it's unconstitutional, another step to bypass Congress. But hasn't your own position on guns evolved, sir? The New Jersey Star-Ledger reports that you signed several laws to regulate the possession of firearms and that you argued back in August 2013, and I quote, these common sense measures will strengthen New Jersey's already tough gun laws. So isn't that kind of what the president wants to do now?
No, absolutely not. The president wants to do things without working with his Congress, without working with the legislature, and without getting the consent of the American people. And the fact is that that's not a democracy, that's a dictatorship. And we need to be very, very concerned about that. See, here's the thing. I don't think the founders put the Second Amendment as number 2 by accident. I don't think they dropped all the amendments into a hat and picked them out of a hat. I think they made the Second Amendment because they thought it was just that important. And fact is, in New Jersey, what we have done is to make it easier now to get a conceal and carry permit. We have made it easier to do that, not harder. And the way we've done it is properly through regulatory action, not by signing unconstitutional executive orders. This guy is a petulant child. That's what he is. I mean, you know, fact is, Neil, let's think about, and I hope the president's watching tonight, because here's what I'd like to tell him. Mr. President, we're not against you, we're against your policies. When you became president, you had a Democratic Congress and a filibuster-proof Democratic Senate. You had only 21 Republican governors in this country. And now, after 7 years of your policies, we have the biggest majority we've had since the 1920s in the House, a Republican majority in the Senate, and 31 out of 50 Republican governors. The American people have rejected your agenda, and now you're trying to go around it. That's not right. It's not constitutional, and we are going to kick your rear end out of the White House.
So what is the answer, Senator Cruz, to stop mass shootings and violent crime up in 30 cities across the country?
The answer is simple. You prosecute criminals. You target the bad guys. You know, a minute ago, Neil asked, what has President Obama done to illustrate that he wants to go after guns? Well, he appointed Eric Holder as Attorney General. Eric Holder said he viewed his mission as brainwashing the American people against guns. He appointed Sonia Sotomayor to the Supreme Court, someone who has been a radical against the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. He launched Fast and Furious, illegally selling guns to Mexican drug lords that were then used to shoot law enforcement officials. And I'll tell you what Hillary Clinton has said. Hillary Clinton says she agrees with the dissenters, the Supreme Court dissenters in the Heller case. There were 4 dissenters, and they said that they believe the Second Amendment protects no individual right to keep and bear arms whatsoever, which means if their view prevailed and the next president's going to get 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 Supreme Court justices, the court will rule that not a single person in this room has any right under the Second Amendment, and the government could confiscate your guns. And I'll note that California's senator, Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein, said if she could say to Mr. America and Mrs. America, give me your guns, I'm rounding them up, she would. And let me make a final point on this. Listen, in any Republican primary, everyone is going to say they support the Second Amendment. unless you are clinically insane. That's what you say in a primary. But the voters are savvier than that. They recognize that people's actions don't always match their words. I've got a proven record fighting to defend the Second Amendment. There's a reason Gun Owners of America has endorsed me in this race. There's a reason the NRA gave me their Carter Night Freedom